Coming up next.
After we graduated, we started a small brick and mortar in a town just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And shortly after that, we tried to get started, trying to get pregnant. It took us a little bit. And then once I finally got pregnant with my first kiddo, my health was never great, but I could really start seeing it go bad. And then shortly after that, almost exactly 2 years later, I had our second child. And then my health just went from bad to worse. And it was very debilitating. So, lots of brain fog. There was insomnia. There was very little sleep. And I know people are like, well, you had a baby. But even, as they were sleeping, I still wasn't. And I think the biggest thing was just no energy, just, really, really fatigued, where I was like literally like using the wall to like stand up and then just like, navigate around the house because I just didn't have the energy to do anything. The crazy thing about it though was in that season, I was still wearing all the hats as women typically do, So I was the wife and the mom, and I was still seeing patients part-time. So I was a chiropractor. We had a business, so small business owner. We were really active in our church. And I mean, just felt like I was failing at all of them. And it was there that God, just by his grace, because I can't pull myself out of it. I'm just so sick, by his grace, he pulls me out and just almost just whispered the words, "You are enough." And it was that I was enough in my brokenness, in all that I couldn't do, that my value wasn't in my output and being this to everybody and doing all the things for everybody, but it was just in the one who made me. He just wants me, and he just wants a relationship with me, and just wants me to show up, And so that was a big turning point where I could really start to shift out of this kind of fight or flight mindset, really.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You are here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because he's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction, your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Joya, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing his truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter. A woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome to the Faith Over Addiction podcast. I'm Tanya Joya, your host, and I have with me Dr. Ginger Sharp. She is a chiropractor and functional medicine practitioner. She works with her husband and she helps women overcome chronic health challenges. They have some really exciting stuff coming out about blood work. One of the things we're going to talk about is that clarity piece. We can
Mm.
get so overwhelmed by all the information coming at us, and especially when we're caring for somebody who either is choosing not to care for themselves or can't care for themselves, we place ourselves last. So, Dr. Ginger, you have your own story about that. Let's start there and get some real humanness in here and where you were turning to God in this process.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, so like you said, I am a chiropractor, and that's where my husband and I met was at chiropractic school. And then after we graduated, we started a small brick and mortar in a town just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And shortly after that, we tried to get started, trying to get pregnant. It took us a little bit. And then once I finally got pregnant with my first kiddo, my health was never great, but it really just, I could really start seeing it go bad. And then shortly after that, almost exactly 2 years later, I had our second child. And then my health just went from bad to worse. And it was very debilitating. So, lots of brain fog. There was insomnia. There was very little sleep. And I know people are like, "Well, you had a baby," but even as they were sleeping, I still wasn't. And I think the biggest thing was just no energy. Just really really fatigued. Where I was like literally like using the wall to like stand up and then just like navigate around the house because I just didn't have the energy to do anything. The crazy thing about it though was in that season I was still wearing all the hats as women typically do, so I was the wife and the mom, and I was still seeing patients part-time. So as chiropractor, we had a business, so small business owner. We were really active in our church. And I mean, I was just felt like I was failing at all of them. And it it was there that God, just by his grace, because I can't pull myself out of it. I'm just so sick, by his grace, he pulls me out and just almost just whispered the words, "You are enough." And it was that I was enough in my brokenness, in all that I couldn't do, that my value wasn't in my output and being this to everybody and doing all the things for everybody, but it was just in the one who made me. Just he just wants me, and he just wants a relationship with me and just wants me to show up, And so that was a big turning point where I could really start to shift out of this kind of fight or flight mindset, really, mentally, emotionally, and be able just to kind of have this freedom with the Lord just to be me and just to get up and show up and do what I could do that day. And that was going to be enough.
Wow. Were there scriptures you were hanging on to as toeholds during this time?
Yeah, early on, I would say he was just whispering how fearfully and wonderfully made I was. So Psalm 139:14, which is really interesting because I had both of my daughters memorize the whole Psalm 139 at one point, just because it just speaks so much to our identity and who we are in Christ, and how fearfully and wonderfully we are made. And then it was just really cool just to see how God used that to just, I'm talking to you, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are knit together in your mother's womb. You are here, and that is enough. And
Yeah.
so, really, just holding on to that, because that also just shows that his design and what he made is that masterpiece again that he talks about, and how even in healing, whatever we're healing from, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we talk about chronic illness and specifically Lyme with our program that we have and that we work, help women kind of get through is specifically chronic Lyme, but chronic illness, whatever that looks like. The thing that God showed me during my dark time was that He's not a God of chaos, but a God of order. And so healing happens in order. And I think so often I'm trying to do this and trying to do this and trying to do these, all these kind of random things because we want to feel better. We want to be better, And it was again just his grace coming in, and just saying, wait a second, I'm a God of order and healing happens in order. And so once you start, you know, working with that blueprint and with my design, you will heal and you will, fulfill what I've called you to fulfill here.
So you are hanging onto the wall to move around the
Yeah.
house to take care of it. Sounds like somewhere around 2, 3 year old and new baby,
Yeah.
seeing patients, being mom, doing all the mom things. When God is speaking to you, are you saying, okay, I'll be back when I've got this taken care of?
Mm.
Or did you hit a full collapse to where somebody had to take care of you?
Um, there was never a time, and I don't suggest doing it this way, but there was never really, I mean, I was just, that's how, like, my mom was a single mom and raised, me and my brother as a single mom. And so you just did it, there wasn't there was no asking for help. There was no really telling anyone that no one knew. My family didn't even know. And they're like, and it's coming out, I'm sharing my story more and more. And they're like, how did I not know? And I was like, I don't know. I got a good face, I guess, to hold that in, So, and that I think is where I went wrong because I think I was in isolation and because I had isolated myself and I was like, I've just got to push through, and I don't need help. I can do it. I'll get better somehow, and which was beautiful because that's where God met me was in my independence, in the isolation, when it doesn't really make sense, even just physiologically doesn't make sense for me to be able to come out of it. And he's just showing me more and more as I continue to work on health because health is a journey, that community is where true, deep, long lasting healing is. And so I didn't do it that way initially, but I find the more I'm doing community and the more I'm sharing and the more I'm, being seen and heard and encouraged, it's just leaps and bounds for my health. And that's what happens in our program. It's amazing to see in our program that we have these women that come in and it's a group program. So there's several women all on, a call like this, and we're talking about where we're at and what we're doing and what's hard and what's not hard. And so many women are just like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It's too personal or whatever. And so it's been interesting to watch these women start not talking, black screen, you don't see them. And then as time goes on, they turn their screen on and you see them for the first time that, it's been weeks, months even. And then they start talking and they start sharing and they're like, wow, I wish I would have done this sooner. And so, and they're healing. They're like, I have never felt this well before because they were doing it in isolation. And just that one piece, that one change that they were doing really made such a huge impact.
Oh my gosh, that was so rich. I'm writing it down because we've got several things to talk about here.
Yeah.
So that is very much what happens in a family where addiction is present is hiding, not sharing with the world and taking care of it. And then the whole thing stinks because nobody can mind the store all by themselves.
Right.
And community. So let's go back. This is very interesting. And often, the person with the struggling with the addiction, whatever that be, process, substance, whatever, is already struggling with health. But then the person who perceives that they don't have anything wrong because they struggle with health. And you said physiologically this begins to show up. So talk to us. I want to talk about order, I want to talk about community, but what caught me was physiologically, how is this showing up? How is it showing up for you?
Yeah, so just a quick biology lesson, right? So we have a nervous system, it's our brain, our spinal cord, and then the nerves that come off the spinal cord. And then that system is broken into two pieces. It's getting deeper now. We're learning more about it, but for just simplicity purposes, we have two systems. One's called the sympathetic, but more commonly fight or flight, wired and tired. So, and that's designed, it's a beautiful design, and we need it because it's designed to keep us alive. That's the purpose, and that's what we're made for. We're made for life, and so it's a bigger system versus the other one. If a bear comes into the room, right, we are either going to fight that bear or we're going to run from the bear. This is kind of the concept there. But what happens in our brain is that it goes into reaction mode. There is no responding. There's no critical thinking. There's no deep conversations. There's none of that. It's I'm just quickly reacting to this to get, I got to get away. I got to protect my babies. I've got to fight it. Blood is pumping, the adrenaline. There's not a lot of like necessarily, I'm not going to say smart thoughts because you can, but it's just reactions versus what we call parasympathetic, or it's rest and digest. But it's so much more than just rest and digest. Again, this is where critical thinking takes place. This is where our deep, intimate relationships take place. This is where God says, be still. And then be still means switch from the sympathetic, from the fight or flight. You have to switch to be still, because that's where I can have a deep conversation with the Lord. That's where I can hear him. That's where I can pay attention and look for him. Because when I'm running from a bear, I'm not wanting to sit down and have a chat with God and be like, okay, what am I doing for the day, or whatever it is, worshiping or praising him even in that moment, because I'm running, I'm in that fight or flight. And so from a physiology standpoint, when we're in chronic illness or addiction or whatever it is, we live most of our life, most of the day in fight or flight. So I don't even, at the time, there was a dark time where I don't even have the capacity to come out of that and have a relationship with the Lord. That's why I say by his grace, he saw me and met me right there and pulled me out and say, okay, be still. I'm here. I'm present. Be with me. And I think that's where a spouse or a friend or that community comes in again to help you come out of it. Because every day we all need to practice being still. And the more we practice, the more we can come out of that stressing fight or flight mode and into the rest and digest.
Wow. Again, just lots of stuff, but let's pick up on Dr. Josh, your husband, who he was definitely there. So if you're more intimate set of family, did he see it? Was he there?
Yeah. And it's hard. Gosh, it's so hard to be a doctor to your spouse. We both say it either way, He would say things, and he would say a lot of the right things, and all of that. But I was going to fix myself. I was going to figure this out myself. That's not really me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're in fight or flight. You're in this reactive mode where you don't really see yourself and what was going on. And even as I was getting better, he was, I would have a bad day and be like, I'm not any better. This is, I'm never going to get better. This is just my life. And, have a bad day. Right. But he was there to say, no. You are leaps and bounds. Remember when you did this and you did this. And, I would sleep for 3 or 4 hours every weekend on Saturday and Sunday. I was just sleeping the whole time. And I mean, there were just so many things that he's brought to my mind. But I think the biggest thing, especially for a spouse or someone close and intimate, the thing that it's hard for men, especially because they're fixers. Like they're just, give me the tool. I'm going to go to Lowe's. I'm going to get the tool. I'm going to come back and I'm going to fix this. And there is no tool to fix chronic illness or addiction or a lot of things, and so they become very helpless in that position. And I don't know what to do. And I think the best thing that he did was that he was patient with me. He was really patient. And it was mostly in what he didn't say, but it was the hug that said, we're going to be okay. And we're going to get through this and you're getting better. Or it was just as I was going through the day, talking with other people, the arm around me, just, we got this, we're going to do this, and it was more of those non-verbal things that he did that really just helped me get into that calm, rest and digest. Okay, I'm going to be okay, and we're going to get through this. And so I was really just thankful to the Lord for giving me a patient man that chose to stay, because I think a lot of people don't stay in marriages, not because they don't love each other, but illness of any kind is really taxing on a marriage. It's really, really taxing on a marriage. And I've seen so many break up because they were sick and they didn't
Mhm.
feel well. And some of them didn't even know that they were sick and didn't feel well. But it's really hard to love someone, to be patient, to be kind, not to be rude. As 1 Corinthians 13, shares with us about what love is whenever you don't feel well.
That's one of the questions is he's telling you it's all going to be okay. You were able to rest and to digest and trust him. Ultimately, we're trusting God.
Right.
What kept you from that's where it becomes hard to love somebody. What kept you from snapping back at him saying, I'm not okay and I'm never going to be, just the downward shame spiral
Yeah.
of I'm
Yeah.
taking energy from the family. I know I'm taking energy from the family and I can't help it and I feel selfish.
Yeah. Um, there were those days. I said those things. That sounds very familiar. I did say those things, and he was patient with me. Josh was patient in me with a lot of that. But I think that so much of the things that I felt like I needed Josh to say, or I needed Josh to do, or that I was grasping for to get better, was not Josh's responsibility. And it took God again intervening and coming in and saying, that's not for him. That's for me. That's a need for me to provide for you, not for Josh to provide for you. And so I think that's a big thing to realize, that not every need that we have is for ourselves to provide or for anybody else to provide. Sometimes it's just for the Lord to provide. And so this was another time where I was really working on being still and just taking all of that to the Lord, laying it down,
Mhm.
and giving all of those burdens to him. And he was nourishing me in that way. And that again took some back and forth of, I'm never getting better. This is my life now. Josh, this is your fault, to, I'm sorry, Josh, it's not your fault. And I'm taking this to the Lord now. It's for him to take care of, and deepen my relationship with him, with the Lord, and to grow, because that's what he wants. He wants a deep relationship. And so sometimes he uses these illnesses to move forward with that plan.
In the practical, how did it look of going, okay, Josh, I know you're doing what God has asked you to do the best that you can, and I cannot use this as a dumping ground. In the practical, how did you take this to God? Were you writing laments? Were you reading the Psalms? Were you face down going, I cannot move anymore? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was a desperation cry for sure from my knees. It was really, there isn't anything left in the tank, right? There's nothing left in the cup. It was just dark. It was in the dark of the night, and like in the dead of the night. It was there where he would meet me most often, because it was still, it was quiet and it was still, and I was awake because I wasn't sleeping well. And it was just crying out. It was just, hear me, see me, help me. Music always, has always kind of spoke to my heart. He's really used music in ways, and so a lot of times it would just be throwing on a radio station, or a radio. I don't, they don't have to do radio stations anymore. A podcast station, that I have, that is just worship music and just praising and praising and praising. But it was really just, I mean, I think so many people are like, well, you need to be in your Bible, and you need to, be doing the study, and you need to, have all of those things. And those all things are good. And yes, we should do those. But when you are in the thick of it, just being still and crying out was enough. And he knew that. I mean, he knew, that was all that I had.
Oh,
Yeah.
what, when you look back, what do you think made you afraid not to share it with, Josh knew, of course, because he was there, but
Right.
with those who could have helped you, the best girlfriend, the mom, the
Mm,
sisters,
yeah.
the people in the church, what kept you from doing
Yeah, pride for sure. I was a doctor. I was supposed to be helping others prevent the very thing that I was going through. I was going to work and I was saying, "Oh, you have chronic illness. This is what you should be doing." And so for me to say, I have chronic illness too, and I can't figure this out, and I'm struggling, and I
it?
feel like I'm drowning, I felt hypocritical. There we go. Is that it?
There you are.
Hypocritical,
Yeah.
you know, hypocritical, you know what I mean? And it was, well, I can't let them know I'm a mess because they're a mess too. And I'm supposed to be the strong one to help them navigate through this. And if I look weak and if I don't have it together, then how are they going to have any faith or any confidence in me to help them? So it was pride, yeah.
How did you work? That is such I mean, when you get down to a lot of it, that is a root cause of a
Yeah.
lot of things, a lot of illnesses, addiction, all those types of things. How you're talking about it freely. How did you actually work through it, and how are you presenting yourself to patients now?
Now, that's great. That's a great question. Working through it was tough. It would take all my energy. Because I was only working part-time. So and it kind of changed, but I got it to where I was just working one day. And so I would do all the things I needed to do and all the rest and all of the biohacks, so to speak, that I could do to be able to be ready for that one day. And then I would crash. And then I would, do everything that I could do to come back and be ready for that one day. And honestly, like I said, I had brain fog. Like only by God's grace was I able to communicate to patients because like I literally was like, okay, I see that this is a doorknob and I know that that's a doorknob, but I don't know how to say turn the doorknob, you know?
Mm.
And so I don't know, they were gracious with me. God was gracious, and I got through it. Now in our group program, I love it because I'm just showing up and this is what I got today. This is my win. We talk about wins all the time. What they can be little wins. I showed up to this meeting is my win for the day. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be anything like I don't know. It doesn't have to be this huge big mind shift. It just I showed up and that was big. And that's all it needs to be. Um but I'm very open about where I'm at in life and what I'm doing and what I'm working on and I'll say I'm, trying to journal every day or have gratitude, like a gratitude journal every night, and that's what I'm working on. And some weeks I show up and I did it, and other weeks it was a busy week and I didn't get it all done, and that's hard for me because I am naturally a perfectionist. I want to excel at everything, and so for me to say I didn't get it done is like I didn't get my homework done. That is
Mm-hmm.
really hard for me to say, but it's also really freeing just to be able to be me and show up and there's no condemnation there. It's like, yeah, well, pick it up again and keep going. So that again, that community and that just being yourself is really there's a lot of peace there.
I'm going to give a word and you tell me if this is the right word or not. How is this compassion for yourself help you treat other I'll help you treat the people who come to you for help? Be compassionate with them.
Yeah, it change it, it's a mind shift. You know what I mean? It changes your perspective to be able to say because especially because the amount of grace and compassion God has given me, especially as I come out of the chronic illness and realize really where I was and how dark it was and how much grace he had to give me to come out of it. It's just like I just want to pour that onto other people because that's just what they need. We talk about God is a God of order, and the first step in the order that we is safety. When we don't feel safe mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, we feel like we're running from a bear all day, every day, then you can't heal there. There is no healing there. You're still stuck in fight or flight. So you're running from a bear, but then yeah, you're trying to talk with, be still and you're trying to be a part of a community and you're trying to do all of these things to pull you out of that. And I think that the compassion and the grace and the love that God showed me is the very key that so many of us need just to start, just to move forward. We plateau, any of the things. We just don't feel safe. And it sounds so simple, it sounds so simple. Just creating a safe space where you can just go or creating a community where you can just go and be yourself. I mean, it's so more powerful than any supplement I ever took or any detox or cleanse or any of that stuff that I ever did. Just being able to breathe, take a deep breath, and just feel safe and that I could just be me is just amazing.
Let's anchor this just a little bit. Safe.
Mm.
If you had to give it characteristics,
Oh yeah.
so most, not all of us in an addiction sphere, but a good percent of us will have a job, will have food on the table, but there's nothing emotionally or physiologically safe in that environment. So
Yeah.
if
Gosh.
what would be a kind of a couple questions a woman could ask herself and go, okay, do I feel safe? Well, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think a really practical way that I mean that yeah is mentally is really going in to wherever in your house. I would start with your house. It's just the most safe place. I think for a lot of people, it's the most safe place that you can be. Not always, but going into your bedroom, going in, and you walk in there, and your shoulders should drop, your white knuckles should relax, your heart rate should go down, and you should be able to take a deep breath all the way in and all the way out. You should be able to go from the fight or flight into the parasympathetic mode, and your brain should be able to let things go. But so often mentally, we're in this negative feedback loop, or we're reeling, reeling, reeling. There is this wired and tired, and we cannot be still. And I think mentally, emotionally, that's there too. People walking on eggshells. If you feel like I'm always, walking on eggshells, so you go to this safe space, you're able to breathe physically. You are safe in this space. Mentally, you're able to kind of start winding down, but you still kind of feel like if I go back out there, I'm going to have to walk on eggshells. If I go back out
Mm.
there, I'm going to have to really be careful with my words or what, if I go back out there, I'm going to have, and the out there can be outside it could be in the living room, or it could be at your work, or it could be at the gym, or wherever you're at. You just need to pay attention. When you think about something, do you tense up? If that is
Mm.
the case. So, for example, I was in a toxic relationship at one point, and then I was out of the toxic relationship, completely out of it. Physically, everything was, I was really safe. But I still, anytime I was still had the negative feedback loop going of the situation and of of everything, in the relationship. And I get a knot in the pit of my stomach. My knuckles would go white. I was clenching. I didn't realize how sore my jaw was. I was clenching my jaw all the time. And I'm not in the relationship anymore. And so, I mean, it physically took me saying, it's over. It's done. You are safe. So if you feel like I haven't taken a full good breath in a couple days,
Tough.
that's a good way to say, okay, I'm not. Or if your jaws, I mean, I didn't even realize that they were sore, but I was clenching all the time. And then once I started just giving myself permission to be safe, giving myself permission to be um to not be in that fight or flight and kind of get over into the rest and digest, then I could really start seeing those effects even more clearly of like, oh, my hands aren't so, sore, my jaw isn't sore, and I'm able to actually take a deep breath and feel good about it.
What great signals. What great
Yeah.
signals. So I hope everybody listening goes back and listens to this section again, saying, here are the signals you need to be looking for. What are the hidden health costs? In the addiction world, we would call this hypervigilance. what are the hidden health costs for continued hypervigilance if I don't feel safe? I am constantly listening for the bear. I'm constantly listening for, what's going to happen or the other
Hmm.
shoe to drop.
Yeah. And
Number,
so, again, we have this internal terrain that the gut health and the liver health and lymphatic flow that we need to maintain. And so what happens when we are stuck in fight or flight for years and years and years is our terrain gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And especially, we talked a little bit about this in the beginning of what we talked in the beginning. Since 1960, there have been over 100 million chemicals
mm,
introduced into our environment. And so we're already kind of fighting this toxic battle, right? And that's just chemical battle. You know what I mean? Like this physical thing getting in. That's not emotional toxicity. That's not mental toxicity. That's not any of those things, right? And so when all of this toxin gets inside of us and our terrain and our internal environment is really weak and broken down because we're in fight or flight all the time, then that's where disease starts to harbor, right? So then infection loves to live there because infection loves a really depleted body that doesn't have a lot of oxygen. And so whenever we're full of toxins and we're full in fight or flight, there is no oxygen there, in the cells and in our tissues, and there's no healing and repairing and rebuilding and nourishing. So that's where you start to see those diseases start to come in. And it's usually something symptom we see a lot of symptoms, the headaches. I mean, we could list symptoms for days, the headaches and backaches and all of that. But we can also start getting like pre-diabetic, and then you go into diabetic, and I mean, it can filter on. We're seeing more and more cancers, and we're seeing Alzheimer's and dementia and all of those things. It's because we live in a fight or flight, and our internal terrain cannot help us. It cannot repair. It cannot digest. It cannot do what it's called to do because it's really trying to keep you alive. And so it's
yes.
really just in fight or flight. And so we can go deep into cell danger response. And that's basically what cell danger response is there's kind of like three different levels. And it's just this, my body's keeping me alive and then giving me other symptoms. It's still trying to keep you alive. And then we get these big, huge diagnoses. And that's your body's like last ditch effort. Look, I am trying everything I can, but I can't repair. I can't restore, I can't replenish. And so then we get these awful life altering diagnoses that are devastating for everybody.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right, that's a lot to delve into. What is now you and Dr. Joss have designed a new program that's coming out that will answer a lot. If
Oh,
the
yeah.
woman is sitting there going, oh my gosh, I could have this, this, and this, we turn to Dr. Google, no
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
whatsoever, panic self,
Careful
right?
with that. Yeah.
So you have a new program that y'all are working on. Give
Yeah.
us some hope.
Yeah. Yeah. So we run a blood test. It's called MVX Plus Panel, and it's new. It's new March 2025. So it's
Mm.
a brand new blood panel that is like none other before. It's a functional medicine test, and it's testing and it's the first test to actually be able to look at your internal terrain at the cellular level to see how you're doing. So it's looking for toxins that can cause these long-term huge, illnesses way down the road, right? So we got to get that sooner. We want to get, we need to know get rid of our toxic load sooner than later, right? And it's going to tell us what kind of infections we have, whether that's a bacterial infection or viral or fungal or parasitic infection, right? It also shows us like, are we malnourished? Are we not, it kind of helps us look at our diet and see, is our diet an issue? And if it is, we can figure out what we need to do with it. And the other big thing it does is blood sugar imbalance, looking at that metabolic function and looking at insulin resistance and prediabetes and diabetics and things like that, which are all foundational markers for that internal terrain that has to work really well to be healthy and to live a life full of life and full of energy. to fulfill our purpose. And so it's at LabCorp. So what we're going to do, what we're doing, and hopefully the prayer is that by the end of July we have it all out and going. It's a training, and you watch the training, and then at the end of the training, there's an offer for a consultation with Josh to go. Oh, so you'll get the blood test, and actually the blood test will be free to get. And then you'll pay for the consultation with Josh. And then he goes over everything in English, in actual English of what it all means, of what each thing means on your test. And then he's going to give you a direction. He's going to say, okay, you're on the right track. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. Or he's going to say, this might work really well for you. Or, we have this program that is addressing every single thing on this panel, every single, we can move the needle into healthy in every single aspect with our Grow program. And I really suggest that you do that. So no matter what, you walk away understanding what's going on with your body in a foundational way, understanding like things that are actually going to move the needle. They're not just managing symptoms, but we're looking at root cause things. And you're going to get a path, whether it's working with us or not, doesn't matter. He's going to give you your next step. This is what you should do.
So we're back to talking about order.
Yeah.
you have to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Before you can move forward. And I'm going to use a big word here. Allopathic medicine treats symptoms. So when we're looking at a Western medicine, they are trained, and bless their hearts, they are, and they do great, especially with big things, heart attacks, broken legs, those types of things.
Yeah, 100%.
They're trained to deal with those mass emergencies, and I'm glad they're there. What we're learning is we may be living longer, but our time in illness is longer too. And who wants to live longer when they can't have a whole life? So if I'm hearing you, Ginger, you and Josh are giving us the opportunity to get the information we need to make educated decisions about the whole freaking system, rather than, today, my stomach doesn't feel good, or my head hurts, those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was agreeing. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we're doing. And I think that our big thing with our program and what we're doing is I don't get to decide quantity of life. God decides that. But I do get to help, and I do get to reduce risk for illness and things like that for quality. And that's what we want. We want a quality life. So however many years we have, that we can hug our grandchildren and we can play with our great grandchildren. That's my vision there. Like I want to be able to participate, and I want to be able to share the Lord with them. And I want to be able to, leave this legacy that once you hit 40, your life isn't over. I feel like, so many people think it's just downhill from here, but honestly, like I've the healthiest I've ever been in my 40s, and so, managing symptoms can be important. Sometimes we need to manage symptoms, right? I mean, there is value in that. I don't necessarily put enough value in that sometimes, because I'm like, you'll be fine. Let's just keep moving forward, But we do need to manage them in some capacity. But really, if we want to have that quality life, we have to address the root causes of what those symptoms are telling us, because the symptoms are just signals that your body's saying, hey, something isn't right. I've got inflammation here and I don't know why, but it needs to get out, and we've got to figure this out so that it doesn't keep progressing to the next step and the next layer of disease.
And what I love about this test is blood tests are tricky, and having your OB or GYN read them, they do what they've been trained to do, but you're looking at everything. And as you said, this is new. So I would encourage anybody who's listening to at least look at what you're offering.
Yeah, and the training's free. I mean, because we go through the test and what each thing means and all of that, and it's free. The training is totally free, so you can watch. I think it's 25 minutes ish to go through, and so at least just start getting an idea of how it works and what we're looking at and the importance of each of those things.
Fantastic. I can't wait any longer. Give us your .coms, give us your socials. Where can we find more information about you?
Yeah, so right now, the best thing to do is we have a health assessment. It's a quiz that you can take. It takes just a couple minutes to take the quiz, and it just kind of shows you where you're at. These symptoms that we're having and these symptoms that we're talking about, it will tell you what they're saying. It's, yeah, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing. Or, you know what, you've got some chronic health issues and here's a red flag. You need to do something. You need to take action somehow. And so that's really easy. It's at discoverhealthquiz.com. And like I said, take a couple minutes, take it, and then you'll get results right away just to see, if you're, I think it's green, yellow, or red. And so that's a good way just to kind of get plugged in with us. And then eventually it'll be, like I said, I'm hoping by the end of July, our training will be discoverhealthtraining.com. And you can go right to that. And then our website, Josh, we've got all sorts of stuff going on. Josh has a podcast where he talks about these foundational things, the effects of toxins, how to get toxins out, biohacks for health, things like that. And that's Discover Health Podcast with Dr. Josh. Mm-hmm. And then lastly is our website. And that's where we put everything that goes on there. So, and that's Discover Health FM, like functionalmedicine.com.
So if you're anything like me, I've studied all this, I've looked at it, and often I get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What Dr. Ginger and Dr. Josh are offering you is an opportunity to see you, mm-hmm. which is what you were talking about earlier of you had to come to God and say, I really need you to see me. And it's not that he wasn't seeing you. It's your connection. So that, for those listening, that's the real opportunity. Is we often get bombarded with all this information. Who do you listen to and what do you do?
So
this
true.
Blood test will provide you with that foundation from whence you can choose to do nothing, to do something, to go back to your regular doctor, whatever that is, with clear information on where you are. It's a marker.
Right. And you got to start somewhere. So that getting that clarity of where I am right now, and then what are my options, and then it's again, like you said, up to you to take the step or not.
The next step.
Yeah.
Dr. Ginger, thank you so much for being here today. Such an enlightening, very personal lived story, and one that now you're serving your community, which is just absolutely wonderful in this sea of information. That's I think why sometimes we can't make decisions, because I know I get catatonic. I'm
right, 100%.
I've heard all this stuff, but I don't know which way. Do I throw out my black plastic? Do I, make sure everything comes from a cow that lives 5 miles down the road? What do I do with all this information?
Right. You could rabbit trail and you can spend as much money on those rabbit trails as you want. But just finding someone that can help you just say, just take this step. And now let's just take this step. And then just take the, to kind of guide you through is valuable for sure.
Fantastic. Hey, let's give credit to the artist who has put up all those things behind you.
Yeah, this is for my daughter. She's 12. Her name is Noelle, and she is my artist. She creates something every day for me. And so it's a kind of a rotating wall of all of her masterpieces.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Ginger, thank you so much for being here. Be sure and catch her quiz at discoverhealthquiz.com. And then Dr. Josh has a podcast called Discover Health.
Podcast, yeah. You have to add the podcast in.
Podcast, you'll find it. And then Discover Health
FM. Yeah, like functional medicine.
DiscoverHealthFM.com. I know I listen to things and I don't read the blurbs. All of this will be in the blurb. And thank you, Dr. Ginger, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope, or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.